Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
The lure is over. The city will tell us what we lack.
A to jest lokal nocny z napojami wysokoalkoholowymi i tańcem.
Właściwie to są dzieci mojej dobrej znajomej.
Będą robiły u nas chórki i striptizy.
Musicie się tylko dobrze bawić, reszta pójdzie sama.
Dobry wieczór bardzo szanownemu państwu. Przed państwem córki dancingu. 2 syrenek.
Przyszłam do miasta. Chciałam pokazać się z najlepszej strony. Zmienić coś, zmienić. Zwrócić uwagę. Zwróciłam wszystko. Szum, szum, szum samochodów i ulic. Zawrót głowy, zostajemy, nie ma mowy. Szum, szum, szum samochodów i ulic. Zawrót głowy, zostajemy, nie ma mowy. To miasto wyjaśni, czego nam jest brak.
Chodź, muszę coś powiedzieć. Oszalałem.
This was your first time with this movie?
Yes. My first time with the Mermaid sisters.
Okay. I'm very excited to see what you think about this. Movie is bonkers. This is bonkers. And I'm trying to remember, when did we talk? It was a trailer pick. It was a trailer pick by me on 2017, January 19th, 2017.
Wow.
Yes. And I don't know if you remember, but I was pretty excited about this movie. I think I had yet discovered my, deep love. As you know, I love horror movies now. I had yet to discover that in myself, but this movie, for some reason, really intrigued me. And then I watched it, and now I've watched it twice. And I want to know, Andy, what do you think I think of this movie? It's way too easy. Low-hanging fruit.
Is it? Like, I don't know. I feel I was thinking about this, and I'm like, I don't know where he is going to land with this movie, because it is kind of a bonkers movie. I really struggle with calling it a horror film. I think that there are some horrific elements in it, certainly, but when it comes to the genre mashup, I think that the musical aspect kind of washes over the horror, and it just becomes a little bit more of kind of a dark fantasy story, I guess, kind of a dark fairy tale. I guess I'm just going to say, I think you like it. I don't know. I really don't know. Like, I walked, when I finished this, I just said, I have no clue where Pete is going to fall with this one.
Really?
Because it's such a bonkers movie. I can see people going many different ways.
Yeah.
From this one.
I think you're a bit meh on the movie. I think that ultimately you've landed. I think what you just described is a complete projection. And I think you just described it for yourself. I think you had trouble with the genre mashup, and that you feel like it was trying to do too many things. And as a result, it didn't successfully do any of them.
Well, I guess we'll find out here in a little bit.
Ooh, I can't wait.
But you'll have to wait. For now, the movie was not rated when it was released here in the States, but it is full of sex and nudity. It has some moderate violence, moderate alcohol and drugs, moderate frightening and intense scenes. Oh, and did I mention the nudity part? Because there's a lot of it. It's like, a lot of nudity.
But you know what? Don't worry about it, because by the end, you're not even going to notice anymore. There's so much nudity. It's like just a nudity film.
It's just a nudist camp type of movie. There you go.
All right. It's time for our questionnaire. You know what? It was time for a questionnaire when we started this, and now we're almost finished with it. So if you haven't had a chance to head over to TruStory.fm/thenextreel and check out the annual questionnaire, please do. It helps us learn a little bit more about you, your listening habits, what you like, don't like about the show. It helps us kind of refine what we're doing and hopefully make it better. To top it off, one lucky listener who fills out the questionnaire will get a free year of membership in our supporting member program. They'll get access to all those fancy benefits just by filling out a little questionnaire. And it's almost over. Almost over. Promise.
So close. So close to being over. And then we'll stop talking about it for another 5-ish years.
I'm sure we'll find something else to talk about, though.
We'll fill this spot with more air. We are going to feature audio reviews. We want to start including little bits, little snippets from our listeners as to what you think of the movies that we are talking about on this show. Please send us your clip. We want to hear your thoughts. Yeah, just send it over about a 30-second-ish audio file to reviews@trustory.fm. Watch the film, record your little review, and send it over to us. We just might showcase it on the show. Remember to get it in quick, though. We record about 2 weeks early. The earlier, the better, and it's more likely to end up in the show.
To that end, our watch list. If you don't know what we're watching in 2 weeks, you can just head over to our HQ profile over on Letterboxd. You can get there really quickly. Just letterboxd.com/thenextreel. If you want to get a discount on your own pro or patron membership over at Letterboxd, you can use the discount code NEXTREEL, or just visit thenextreel.com/letterboxd, and you'll get that 20% off. This works for renewals as well.
We just keep coming up with more stuff for merch. I know we're already stewing over all the different ideas we can do for our horror debuts series. We have something up there for every movie, from our last series, the 80s comedy with Coolidge and Heckerling. We already have something up for Messiah of Evil, and we already have something up for Relic, which our episode hasn't even released yet. Or actually, by the time this drops, it probably will have. But I mean, everything's getting in there. So we're having a great time putting stuff together. Check it out at TruStory.fm/TNR merch. You can get shirts, stickers, mugs, face masks, pillows. The list is kind of endless. So head over to TruStory.fm/TNR merch.
And finally, want to watch this movie and help us out at the same time? If you see an Apple or Amazon link, it's an affiliate link in our show notes. And if you click on it, it'll take you to those sites where you can rent the movie, buy the movie, watch the movie. But just know when you do that, we get a little taste off the top from those companies. Win-win. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, we need your support. We don't sell your information. We don't want to turn into one of those shows that has all of those connections that are digging deep into your the web of all of your information that you have permeating online. We just want to do this in as clean way as possible. And so to do that, we need your support. So please become a member and support this show.
Members get all sorts of fun stuff. There's lots of voting. There's a lot of voting. Speaking of, we just crested our 200th episode of the Saturday Matinee as you listen to this.
Holy cow.
200 episode. Feels like we just started, Andy. Just started that show. And we haven't actually, as I'm recording this, we haven't recorded that show, but I'm going to tell you in the past, for the future, that I'm pretty excited about my game related to things that exist over the number 200. Pretty excited about it. You can vote on our Saturday Matinee polls to choose the list topic based on the movie that we're talking about this week. For example, if you were already a member, you could have voted on the list topic for The Lure already.
Pete, I'm going to test you real quick.
Oh, okay.
What the longest living mammal can live up to 200 years? Do you know what that animal is?
Is it some sort of a whale?
It is. It is a bowhead whale.
A bowhead
it's
whale.
The bowhead whale.
All right.
The record age for a bowhead whale, 211 years.
Can you imagine seeing 211 years of ocean? What a horror show that would be.
Yeah, well, it's only been getting worse. So.
Right. Like a bowhead whale says something like, I remember the days when, and you're like crying.
That is so true, so true. But aside from conversations about things that are over 200, members also get access to all sorts of other episodes. In fact, if you're tuning in as a non-member, you're likely going to start getting some member episodes dropping into your feed just to get a sense as to what members get. Because the Relic episode, which is members only, is going to be dropping into the feed. We're going to drop one of our Flick Chart re-ranking episodes in so you can hear what that episode's all about. Maybe our retake episode. Just, these are things that members get. And, we're going to give you some experience with those and, maybe whet your appetite a little bit.
Members also get to vote on what we'll be talking about in all those member bonus episodes. Did you say that already?
No, I didn't.
Well, they do.
But they do.
They do get to vote on that, which is really fun, and it gives us a nice influx of member ideas. When our ideas get crusty, it's nice to have somebody jump in and say, hey, guys, do this. So that's very exciting.
Definitely helps. And members can also watch the live streams as we record the shows. And then, of course, they can jump back into the live streams really anytime they want to any of our previous shows.
They also get access to our super secret members-only channels in our Discord Next Reel server.
And now members get stickers. That's right. Just, every so often, just kind of as a random little surprise and a way to say thank you, members get a few stickers from our merch store. Another way to say thank you for all of your support.
And best of all, you don't have to listen to this ever again. Become a member. You'll get a very custom version of this show without us talking about it. In your very own bespoke members feed of all the Next Reel shows.
Head to TruStory.fm/TNR membership, and you can learn more about the different tiers. The most it'll cost you is $5 per month or $55 per year.
Meet Zinnia.
You are being very polite to someone who is attempting to kill us.
her wife Saffron,
You can plan all you want, but what matters is what you do when your plan falls apart.
and their best friend Goldie.
Glad we didn't miss all the fun.
Swords in hand, they defend their city from the worst of humanity.
I am Lord Buxton Blue.
Vicious Suave. The Fraconian Ring. Herr Haig.
Equity Electric.
Follow their adventures on the Swashbuckling Ladies Debate Society audio drama podcast. Available now at trustory.fm/swashbuckling.
All right, Andy, let's do the big reveal. First of all, did you like this movie, or was I right on the money?
I liked this movie.
You did?
were exactly right on the money. Yeah.
Okay.
As far as the genre mashup, I struggle. I don't know. I struggle with the idea of doing a horror musical, because I feel like when you throw musical into the mix, it pulls some of that horror element out. It feels like it dissipates the scares. And so that's why I feel like, if you're going to call it, something scary, I feel like kind of a dark fairy tale works better in my eyes. Kind of a dark musical fairy tale is where we landed with this. And I'm okay with that. And I really enjoyed the way that they did that. And so, yeah, I ended up having a lot of fun with it. I'm really enjoying the way that we're watching these horror films right now that are where the filmmakers are finding ways to use horror as a metaphor and to kind of craft these stories. So, all in all, I enjoyed this one.
I did too. I found this movie super rewarding, and I struggle a little bit with some of the critical commentary on the film because I'm right with you. I don't think it's a horror movie. I think there are some gruesome elements, but they're quick, largely. And there are some difficult elements, but again, they sort of keep the movie moving through, this dark fantasy. It is so bonkers. It's like a recipe of something that you would never think to make on your own, like in your own kitchen. But seeing somebody else make it, I found it a lot of strangely fun. I found it a lot of fun. The problems that I have with it, and I was really struggling with this, that the problems that I have with it are not structural problems in the movie. I don't have a problem with a lot of the things that other people are really critical about of the narrative. I don't think there's anything personally wrong with the narrative. The things I have problems with are taste things, right? They're things that I don't have a taste for. And it's really hard for me to be critical for a movie about just something that I don't choose to listen to this kind of music, for example. Like I've been listening to the soundtrack for the last couple of days, and it's not my taste. Like I'd rather listen to other things, but it's not bad. It's just not for me. So, I think the music in the context of the movie is great, but it's not something that has me tapping my toes along later. So things like that. We can get into more of that, but
yeah, we'll get into that because I have my own issues with the music. I think sometimes it works better than others, but we'll get there.
Yeah,
we'll get there.
Yeah.
To that end, with our conversation about the Babadook, with our conversation about Relic, I feel like there is this interesting trend right now about using horror films to kind of craft these metaphors. And I guess, for a long time, if you look at horror films, it always has been, maybe not always quite so metaphorical, but certainly an element designed to tap into some of our greatest fears. And to that end, I guess there is a little bit of metaphor in a lot of horror, right? Like the idea of the unknown and learning to confront these sorts of things that, are the dark corners of our lives. And I think that's an interesting element that has become really obvious in these last few films that I really enjoy, because they're really tapping into this idea of kind of this awakening sexuality in young girls as they kind of start maturing and go through puberty, becoming women. Weirdly, as I was watching this film, like I kept going back to this other film that very much dealt with the same thing about kind of a girls becoming, moving through puberty to become women, called The Fits, which is absolutely not a horror film, but another very metaphorical film about kind of this idea of coming of age. And I found that to be an interesting aspect in this film that I think was done pretty interestingly, especially I guess kind of horrifically when you first see these mermaids who, are very virginal young girls who, when they're adopted by this music group, they introduce them to the club owner and they're naked but they are like Barbie dolls. They have breasts, but their crotches are like, it's just like all seamed shut. It was really kind of like almost more horrific to see it that way.
That was probably the most horrific. That was the most horrific thing.
It was so wrong. And I'm like, this is so strange.
Yeah.
But I could understand why they did that, because obviously the fish element of the bottom half of a mermaid is where they ended up having kind of their sex organs. But it also spoke of this idea of kind of a young girl growing and becoming a woman. And I was like, there's a really interesting idea here that it just struck me as I was watching it.
Well, and jump from that to and I'll jump forward to the sort of our in the finale where we get to the actual transformation where one of the girls decides, I'm going to be a human girl. That metaphor plays out in a bit of a gruesome way, and I think it's the metaphorical part is, oh my gosh, one day I'm a young girl and the next day I am a sexual human. And that plays out on the operating table when they somehow find a willing transplant of a young woman who wants to become a mermaid. And it's
very confusing.
Very confusing. And they sever the tail, the bottom half of her torso, and they sever the bottom half of the torso of this human girl, and they swap them and surgically give the mermaid girl legs and sex organs, and the other girl gets a tail. Who knows if she'll be able to use it, or if she will transform into a woman. But she also, our mermaid girl also loses her voice, which is, and that is one of the clear nods to the Hans Christian Andersen Little Mermaid, right? Because I believe that was a trade-off, or was that only in the Disney one where she loses her voice?
No.
That was Hans Christian Andersen. I haven't read that in forever.
Yeah.
And so, growing up, becoming a sexualized human being comes at a cost, right? And we see it on this operating table that's filled with ice, like at a fish market. So gross. It's fantastic. And then she has to live with those consequences. And I think that is a great payoff in a movie that, is ostensibly, or, calls itself sort of trucks in horror tropes. That's a bit of a gruesome scenario that plays out so well for this coming of age story in the movie. That is its primary metaphorical language.
I think so too. And there's a really interesting element to that whole idea of these two sisters, how, they on the making of, they talk about how one sister represents the animal instinct, kind of that awakening sexuality, which you really see in Golden throughout this film. And Silver represents all the emotions and that need for love and that kind of that whole side of it where you need to have that person in your life and you need to please that person. She's, of course, the one who does fall in love with Mitek, who is in love with this other woman suddenly at the end of the film that kind of ends up turning her to sea foam. And we kind of go with that whole Hans Christian Andersen end of the actual story where the Little Mermaid ends up turning to sea foam and everything. Although it's interesting because that story is so much, there's more to the Little Mermaid story. It's kind of a much darker story but for the Little Mermaid, because she the whole thing with the sea foam, but I think she becomes a spirit of the air and actually ends up kind of going up into the air. And so she actually has a chance to get her soul back if she can do good deeds for mankind for 300 years. It's such a dark story that is in no way in any favor of the female character. It really is just a very misanthropic view of kind of the male world, of kind of wanting the female to be perfect is kind of really where it ends. And so to that end, I enjoy that, in this particular film, we have a much different view of that. And I think Agnieszka Smoczyńska, our director, kind of found a way to kind of flip all of that on its head and really take it from the woman's point of view. And we really get this stronger story, I think, than the other mythological version of kind of the mermaid from Hans Christian Andersen's tale. And I like that.
There is this bee metaphor story. I guess it's a little bit even more literal, that it's also a story of immigration, right? Of immigrants and the mermaids as immigrant peoples who are disrespected, used for, in this case, for their, who they are on stage, parading them out as in sort of this nightclub's freak show, or the sort of sex acts, oddities of nature. But they are, and they say once in the movie, do you want to stick around here or before we swim on to America, right? This is their immigrant journey to America in the 80s. And they sort of get stuck here in their little exploration of Poland. And how well does that story work for you?
I think that's actually a really a fitting story also, especially the idea, I'm sure it's always been happening, but it seems like a very current idea of immigration and how immigrants are trying to find this, quote, better place somewhere else and end up oftentimes getting wrapped into and then abused in the sex industry. Mm-hmm. And for two characters who, they're mermaids, they don't have the view of body shame as many other people do. So they're just used to walking around naked all the time because it's just like there's nothing. It's like a fish. A fish isn't wearing clothes. They're a fish. And so they're just being mermaids. But for us, they just happen to be naked. And so that ties them into this place where they're used very much for their sexuality for these stage shows because, there's something weirdly appealing about them, even though the way that their tails are designed, I'll just say, I mean, it's kind of a horrific view of the mermaid because there's nothing sensual about the bottom halves of them.
It's like an eel. It's not
they're very slimy, long, almost weirdly masculine and erect is kind of weirdly what they end up looking like, which I think is kind of funny as another way to kind of subvert that whole view of them as kind of these sexual beings. But I think that idea of this immigrant story is really interesting, and especially because, I mean, it is in this alternate 80s Poland, which was very in 80s Poland. It was communist Poland, and the way that the society was more misogynistic, I think, is another thing that they're kind of bringing up here as kind of part of that whole thing with these immigrants and the women.
There's a lot going on, right? And the fact that it's set in the 80s. It's set in the 80s for some purpose. Does that matter?
That came from the filmmaker Smoczyńska and her writer, Robert Bolesto, who were very, they grew up in that era and they grew up in this world. And the two singers who they had kind of writing all the music for this and really kind of the whole story kind of was created because of this story of the two sisters, Barbara and Zuzanna Uronska. I'm not exactly sure if I'm saying that right, but they grew up in this world, in this actual club where they're filming here, the Adria, which is really interesting. And they all, as kids, remember it being such a colorful place because of the shows they were watching and everything. Like they referenced a show called the Academia Panaklexa. And it was kind of a surreal kids program, very colorful, magical. And a lot of adults who have seen this said, that's not what 80s Poland looked like. And so they purposefully said, well, it's what we remember from it as kids because, for us, it was colorful, but also it is kind of an alternate world that they're creating here. And I guess the reason that they're doing it is because of the way that communist oppression was kind of pushing down on people in the 80s. And this kind of also was a way to kind of subvert that, to show this kind of like alternate way to kind of get through those things.
Yeah, I feel like thinking about the 80s in regard to this movie is overthinking their intention of the movie. And I think you said it, like this movie's color is because it was Poland through the eyes of children at the time who had no sense of what was actually going on, or had no sense of what was actually going on at the time, or limited sense or limited understanding, right? However, I want to sort of, catch that. But that's what it felt like to me, that in and of itself is enough to create a fantastical universe in which, mermaids are able to come ashore and create a universe in which no one is terribly surprised that mermaids exist. Right? That's the thing that caught me. This entire experience, even the unveiling of the mermaids in the dressing room, no one seemed surprised that mermaids exist. They seemed surprised that there were mermaids here, but not that they exist. There was never a question. So this absolutely, to me, is an alternate universe that is worth exploring on that level alone, that they've created something in terms of world building that is interesting. And it all starts from them, I guess, luring the bandmates to the edge of the water in the very opening sequence.
Wyciągnijcie nas, nie bójcie się, przecież was nie zjemy, wyjemy, wyjemy, wyjemy.
You can see where they're also drawing references from Homer's The Odyssey with the sirens and kind of that whole idea. And this is something I think is really clever for the movie, the idea of sirens and that siren song that these sirens, which are essentially mermaids, would sing out in the ocean to draw sailors to them, and then they would eat the sailors. A very dark way of viewing kind of this mermaid lore that they really bring in here with the idea of these mermaids singing to draw men to them so that they can then eat them. It's a really interesting element that they include here to kind of give it, I guess that's where the horror tone comes from, right? Because, I mean, when they're mermaids and even when they're angry, like they're insanely sharp mermaid teeth appear, and they look like you don't want to mess with them. And so that it's an interesting element that they add. I do question, how does Krysia, I don't know, I look at the band and I just kind of keep in my head calling it mom, dad, and son, even though my sense is they're not actually any of them really related, but I just kind of think of them as kind of a family band. But anyway, Krysia is the quote mom of the band. And she sees that these mermaids are pulling the two men from the band into the water, and she shrieks, almost like a banshee cry, that clearly stops everything from happening. And then somehow the next we see them, they've essentially adopted these mermaids into kind of the group. And so that's an element that I really didn't quite understand. Like, what was it that stopped all of that? Was it, did she have enough willpower to kind of flip the tables on them? I wasn't sure. Yeah, 100% question there. I was able to kind of let that go, and I'm not usually able to let that kind of stuff go. But my headcanon says it's because the girls also found themselves wanting to come on land. Like they maybe thought they wanted to dine on these fine people, but then they changed their minds. Or maybe they wanted to explore.
There's also something charming.
They're you know what they are?
What?
They are the Quakers of the mermaid world, right? I feel like this is that period.
I should just stop you. Go ahead, tell me more about the Quakers.
They're on their journey to go step out of their shells, experience the world before they come back to their world. What's that TV show? The Quaker.
They're Amish. It's Amish. This is Rumspringa.
Amish, yeah, the Amish. Amish, what was the TV show? Amish Paradise.
I don't know, but that was a Weird Al song.
No, there's that TV show. No, the Amish, what is that TV show?
We're spending most of our lives living
Breaking
in
Amish.
Amish Paradise.
Yes, but Breaking Amish was a reality show that followed
Rumspringa.
The Amish. That followed the Amish kids. I don't know where I got Quakers.
I don't either, and I think the Quakers would write if they had phones.
if they actually listened. But this is their Rumspringa.
It's Mermaid Rumspringa. That, I feel like if that doesn't get on a shirt, we're in trouble. A mermaid with an Amish hat. It's Amish Mermaid Rumspringa. I was going to say something else. It is a bit of a charming play right at the beginning of the movie where we have these mermaids who are trying to lure these guys to the edge of the water. And these guys are also playing music and essentially luring the mermaids out of the water, right? It's a lure off.
Yeah.
This is a lure off, and the mermaids lose in the beginning. The mermaids have better teeth.
That's true.
For it, but they actually lose. I think they kind of fall in love with the lure of land and want to explore. And I think that's a charming setup for me, and I like it.
And I hadn't really thought about it, but it is in the title, and that's an interesting element that we're really watching this story of these two young girls that have been lured to a world that's really different from their own, a world, and it's that whole idea of, again, the girl becoming the woman, the lure of a cigarette, the lure of their first drink, of falling in love, of having sex for the first time. Like, all of that is right there in the American title, which I think is pretty interesting.
Totally.
Yeah.
So I feel like we have to cross at some point the bridge of the music. You said you have some issues with it. This is a movie musical. We can't, this is a horror movie musical. So you're watching this movie. Don't be surprised when everybody breaks out in song and dance. They will absolutely do it. Sometimes it will be in the club and there will be a club scene, and that feels very appropriate. And then they'll hop in shopping carts and they'll be at the mall doing an absolute bona fide movie musical number out of context with the rest of the narrative, singing about what it means to be in a city. There are a number of those in the movie. And it sounds like you had some issues with them.
Oh, well, and just to clarify, they're not out of line with the rest of the movie in terms of a musical, because, there are other musical numbers throughout the film. It's like they happen. Yeah. It's a thing. This is a musical. It just happens to be, there's the musical element where they are in the mall and singing around, dancing in shopping carts. And then there's the club musical element where they're just performing in clubs and everything. Yes. So you get a lot of both of that. There's a lot of music in this movie. My issue with it, I in general, I like the performances. I like what they're singing and everything. But I also find that it's very repetitive. And I don't know if that was an intentional way to kind of create that lulling sense of a siren song. But I felt like, especially because, as a non-Polish speaker reading the lyrics, I was like, are they just repeating their stanzas over and over and over again? Because it felt like I just read this and I just read it again. Like, it just kept, like, they're just singing the same lines over and over and over again. And I just like that for me was a little repetitive in the way that I generally kind of approach, what I like in musicals and singing.
It does have a little bit of that La La Land thing going for it. There's just kind of a musical idea or theme that you hear several times. But I do think, to that point, it works. It works because the movie is already bananas. It's just bonkers. It's very 80s synth. It's 80s Euro synth, which has its own bit of identity. And I think you're right. The ideas in the lyrics are super repetitive. I found the same thing, but I found myself really fascinated by the experience of watching this kind of movie. You can also, I think in large part, Once More with Feeling, which was a Buffy the Vampire Slayer episode that was a musical. And I actually think Buffy the Vampire Slayer did it better. I think the music was better. The music was much better. And I like the idea of taking ostensibly a tame horror property and making it something more frivolous like that. I like these properties, and I'm a sucker for musicals. So I think I'm already going into it with that bias. I think, to your point, does the music soften the horror part or the dark fantasy part, or does the dark fantasy horror part lessen the value of the music? I think that's a right concern to have, and that's why I think the sweet spot for this movie, the audience for this movie, it might be pretty small, for people who really love both sides of it.
I think that people are going to be drawn to this film because of the themes and kind of the originality, because I think there's a lot of that in this film. I don't know if a horror fan is looking for just a straight up horror film. I don't know if they're going to be completely satisfied.
Well, because when you watched this movie for the first time, did you know it was a musical movie?
Well, yeah, because I had seen the trailer, and the trailer emphasizes the singing and everything else that's going on. So I kind of had a sense from the trailer, and probably if you listen to that SatMat conversation, because I feel like I was there, it very much is about kind of that mashup of the horror, kind of the fairy tales from Hans Christian Andersen, this idea of music and that kind of 80s club feel. It's kind of a mix-up of all that sort of stuff, which I definitely find appealing. And actually, I really enjoy the fact that it's blending all of that stuff together. I don't think it works as well as a horror film because of that. I don't think the music... I honestly, I think it's really just... I just don't think I connect with how the music was written. I think they could have found ways to kind of expand on the lyrics a little bit more. I think the music, the way that the music sounds is fine. I just feel like the lyrics just get repetitive. But I do think that you're right. For some people, they're going to have a hard time because of that strange blend.
I think there's so much opportunity that comes from this kind of a blend. And I think I think that's the problem that I have with the music. And I think that's what I'm hearing you say too. But, check me when I start lying. It's that they have this opportunity to move story forward through music if you're going to do a musical. And the lyricist just didn't have it, right? Just didn't have a complete sense of how the music could be used to drive the story forward. And as a result, it ends up on the simple side of structure. And so I feel like for me, to my taste, this was a missed opportunity element of the movie, even though I also like it.
Well, and it sounded like something that was, even for the two women, the sisters who were writing all the music, the Ronska sisters, I'm not sure how to say it. They very much were musicians. I mean, they grew up in this club doing, with performances their parents were performing, and they've essentially always been performing. This was their first time doing it for a film. And in the conversations in the behind the scenes, they talk about kind of the complexity of having to, they're not just writing for an album. Now they're writing for this story where everything has to tie together and connect in different ways. And it sounds like as they were, as Smoczyńska and her writer were putting this together, they actually started crafting it with the music, with the sound designer, and really kind of built the whole sound world of the film first to really kind of figure out the story and everything. And it sounds like perhaps in the process of that, the music got so funneled down into kind of the specifics of those moments that they weren't able to kind of get past it to give us a little bit more.
Yeah, they needed to write The Wall, right? They needed to write an early Decemberist album, right? They needed to write something that had its own momentum, its own sort of inertia to keep the story moving forward.
Geez, even The Little Mermaid. I mean, any of those sorts of things. I mean, that's the idea of them.
Duh.
Yeah, that's a musical,
it's
right?
A musical.
It's
We've done this already.
The songs. Right. It's using the songs to advance the story. And as you said, the songs here but again, and like, this is the way I have to look at it. And I'm like, maybe this is what they were going for because that's what it felt like to me. It just is so repetitive that it becomes lulling like a siren song. And that's just in my head. I'm like, that maybe that was the intention that they did with it. It just feels so repetitive that my brain just kind of like, I all of a sudden am hypnotized by it because, it's not moving the story forward, but it is generating kind of a tone for me. And so maybe that's the intention.
Okay, I get that. That may be one of those, like I do, where it's a bridge too far in terms of headcanon.
I'm totally headcanoning. I'm sure I am.
All right.
But then there's Triton.
Okay.
Triton and his music, which is it's a whole different
Triton
thing.
is a metal artist.
Yes. Kind of like not quite death metal, but very, very
he had
heavy,
horns at one point. One of them was ripped out. The other one he ripped out himself. Weird. He's a guy with issues.
Did you have any confusion or issues with the way he was set up and introduced in the story?
I didn't. I did. I don't think I did. Why?
Well, because he randomly just appears. Like we'll be having the story. There's drama between the sisters. I think the first time we see a shot of him, it's when, I don't know, something had happened between Golden and Silver, and Golden like walks out of the club and just like goes out into the alley, or it might be when she first meets the cop, I think. But suddenly we just see just a quick shot of this shadowy male figure who's kind of just looking around, menacing, and then he kind of disappears in the shadows. And I was like, okay, who is that like demon creature? It looked like somebody who had, as you find out later, he had horns and they had been removed. And then it happens again later in the film. And then we finally see him at the bar, and, they actually talk to him, and we learn that, he's he says, like, you're of my blood or something. And so I'm like, oh, so he was a merman, blah, blah. And then later you hear them call out that he's Triton. I'm like, okay, well, now all that makes sense. But it was strange setup. It's like just these shots of him, like, was it just meant to say he's kind of watching them and seeing what they're up to? I wasn't really sure.
I didn't get that. I guess I'm going to take a step back. I didn't have any confusion. I feel like I bought into it. It was confusing a little bit because my more recent experience with Triton is he's the king and they are the daughters of Triton, right? That again is settled mermaid science for me. And so it took just a minute to think, oh, they're not directly related, but he is another of their people, some sort of royalty with horns, I gathered, and I was okay letting that kind of wash over me, so to speak. And we need a character like that, right? We need a character to come in, the sage wisdom character. We need the old wise character to come in and give them guidance and tell them something that they don't know already that will move them forward into the next complication. And we got that. We got that with him. He explained the seafoam bit, and it was all fine. And she needs to eat somebody before dawn.
Well, what's great about him is it's not just kind of that sage wisdom. It's also just flat out honesty. Like when she comes and sings with him at his club, which first of all, the woman that he's singing with seems completely upset about, which I thought was kind of funny.
Yeah, she's not keen.
No, not at all. But then Golden is all excited, and he just looks at her as like, you really need a lot of work, and just walks off. I was just like, he is just got to just say it like it is.
Yes. Yes. I find that delightful. I thought that was really great. So, okay.
Some of the stuff is I'm trying to get a sense of like the merman powers, I guess we'll call them. I mean, they speak through telepathy. We see the two sisters kind of having like, whale/dolphin squeak talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, where they're kind of communicating with each other, which I thought was actually pretty interesting. I liked that.
Yeah.
But then there's also a moment when Silver, she sees Chrysia, performing on Metek through the keyhole in the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
And she seems very upset about this. And like the pipes rupture and start spraying water everywhere. And I was very confused about that. Is this some power that suddenly we're meant to feel that she has with water? Like, what was that all about? Or was it just kind of a metaphor of her being upset right there?
I think it was a metaphor of her being upset right there.
So weird.
I didn't think beyond it, but you're right that the timing is rough. Like that's a rough signal because it implies something that is not implied or explained anywhere else.
No, and it never happens again. It's just, It's the one time where I was like, okay, do they have power over water? It threw me a little bit.
That would be cool, though.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
Right. Speaking of fantasy moments, there was that moment where we go for a deep swim in the
bathtub, right.
Yeah. I think the movie does these, what I can only describe as it's a movie that sets me up to expect anything. We now have a mermaid musical horror film that explores this sort of deep fantasy, sort of psychedelic universe as he climbs over the bathtub and falls into the deep ocean.
And this speaks to the nature of musicals. And that's what I was saying. Like, I feel like there are other scenes that really feel like musical moments when you hop into a bathtub and all of a sudden it's like you're in a giant, endless thing of water, in all directions. And they have this magical moment together. That felt very much like kind of a musical fantasy where it's just, we're in the lyrics, we're in the song as this moment happens where, they're just fooling around in the bathtub. It has moments like there's another moment where Golden is walking around. She's very much pining for being like, she's staring at that. I don't know. It looks like a flat screensaver in the bathroom of ocean images. And then all of a sudden she's singing, walking around, and everybody is frozen. And she's just kind of walking and singing that again.
Which was really cool.
Yeah, very
really
much.
Cool
very much kind of a musical type of moment that you would have. Same thing, although I found it much more confusing after they've dumped the girls. They, quote, killed them. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to read in this whole thing, but where the dad figure, I think he's just named Drummer, in the credits. He punches them both in the face. Apparently they're dead. They wrap them up in carpets and toss them into the river off the bridge. They're all upset. They come back to their house, and it's like, are they drugged? Are they dying? The song's, again, a musical sort of song talking about being poisoned. I'm like, oh, okay, so are they poisoned? And then there's a woman walking around injecting them, like hooking them up to, I don't know, drugs of some sort. Is she supposed to be the representation of addiction? Like this is where all of a sudden kind of those musical songs, I start losing me a little bit, because I'm like, I'm not sure what's happening. Am I just meant to think that they're all just so depressed now because they've killed the Mermaid sisters that they're all shooting up and passing out? I don't know.
Yeah, was that an experience of shooting up, or was it recovery? Right, like they had already come down and they were being like weaned off of whatever they were experiencing. I was very confused by that. You're right. That's a sequence that is a little bit baffling.
Well, and then because is the woman who's walking around, is she the one who Dad is with at the wedding? Like all of a sudden I started getting really confused as we kind of move into some of these elements later in the film, because we have to, everything has to speed up to get us to this wedding. Yes. I got very confused by some of these moments.
Well, there is this regret and grief that is explored in all of these sequences in a way that narratively is unclear, but emotionally I feel like is. I don't think they intended to kill the girls. I think that is a piece of regret. I think the Christia breastfeeding fantasy is a maternal regret, like she had taken a real love to these girls, and you could see that in the very beginning. These are friends' kids, right? She was trying to introduce them and make them her own, and I think she was in real grief, and I think that's a really dark place for them, and so coming to terms with that grief is what this whole sequence is about, and it doesn't feel as well executed.
Yeah, it's a little confusing trying to figure out exactly what the intention was with the story at this particular point. I wasn't sure, especially because then when they kind of, I guess I can understand if that's what we're meant to take out of it. Like they're coming out of this place of addiction that they had been, and Dad, again, I'm just keep calling him Dad. I don't think he is, but
yeah,
he leaves. He packs up his bag and walks out. And I think that's kind of that whole thing that happens when you come out of these situations. You're like, I have to get myself out of this. And he leaves. And again, he sees, I swear he's with the same woman at the wedding. I don't know.
Yeah, you might be right.
Yeah, but it's confusing. But it obviously, something happens that breaks them. Not to mention the fact that when the girls do come back, they say, hey, no harm, no foul. And then they bite Dad's thumb off.
Yes.
It's like, oh.
There is this sort of animalistic thing that's on display here, but also, if we're going to stick to the coming of age metaphor, there is this experience of youth having to sort of spit in the face of elders and in order to sow their own. And in this case, here's the lash out, right? This is literally, I really am sorry you punched me in the face and thought you killed me and then dumped my body in the ocean. And I'm going to bite your thumb off because I want you to know who really is in power. But also figuratively, you were a parental figure, and here I spit at thee.
Yeah.
I bought that. I bought that. I'm glad it didn't go any farther than that. Like, had they gone in and just massacred them, that would have been ill-placed.
In the sense of what we do get with the two of them, I guess it seems like, again, they didn't seem like it was a issue. They're like, hey, it's cool. Mm-hmm. I'm still going to bite your thumb off. It's almost like, in that sense, it was almost like, the Godfather type of punishment. It's like, no, it's fine. We're okay. We took your thumb.
Yeah. And now we're fine.
Yeah.
One day I'll make you an offer you can't refuse. I'm going to ask you to hitchhike. And you won't be able to do it. So then we have the end.
Well, but before that, we didn't really talk about this bit with this lesbian cop, which, again, I think is an interesting element that speaks to kind of Golden and the idea of this animal instinct, this sexuality that's awakening. It was a very interesting sequence because and again, another fantasy dance bit, right? A fantasy kind of musical bit.
Zjadłaś obywatela na mieście.
Nic nie wiem.
Zostaw dowcipy dla swojej paprotki.
Liście spadają jak okupiałe, hewrony tłuką orzechy. Zimnym powietrzem chłodzą gołe łydki dziewcząt wracających ze szkoły. Wiatr podwiewa, nerki marzną, kto ogrzeje i przytuli. Liście spadają jak ogłupiałe, gawrony tłuką orzechy.
She's outside and this cop wants to take her in because she pretty much has a, pretty good reason to believe that that one of these mermaid girls likely, killed this person in the car. I mean,
yes, the death of the German.
Right. Everything points to mermaid murder. And so it's actually just murder, but it's MER-DER.
You see what you did there. Yeah. And let me just say for the record that the title of the music track on the soundtrack is Biting the German to Death. So
fantastic. So there ends up being this draw between Golden and this police officer, and they kind of start singing and dancing about all this everything that had happened, but clearly they are drawn together. And to the point where this cop is saying, I'm going to take you to Disneyland in the song and everything. And I love the little dance that she's doing with her little finger guns and everything. It was a very 80s kind of like bit that was very comical. But it also leads to a bit in the bed where I found kind of compelling because she was not put off by the fishiness of her. She was licking the scales and it all seemed very okay. And I was like, okay, there's something interesting about this that was obviously worth exploring. Although, I wasn't really sure how it ended because then we see the cop kind of pull the gun on Golden again, and then we kind of cut away, and I'm like, okay, so are they getting together, or is Golden now eating the cop? Obviously, the cop didn't shoot her. I wasn't quite sure where we go because we cut away, but I did find it to be kind of a compelling, again, another look at kind of exploration.
Which takes us to I guess I would throw in here that it sort of feels like time has passed in a strange way, right? Like it goes back to how long were they in their drugged state? How long did it take the girls to kind of recover? Because at some point in there, and if I'm to point out a structural issue that is not taste related, it did not take quite enough time for Michalina to fall in love with somebody else.
That was very rushed. That was like, all of a sudden it's like, who is this girl that like he just met, they fell in love, now they're getting married. All of that was super fast. And I get it to a certain extent. We're obviously also, aside from dealing with the bodies, we're also waiting for Silver to recover from her surgery, right? So there's quite a bit of time that obviously happens as she's trying to heal from the operation.
And clearly in some sort of physical therapy. I mean, we see her in the wheelchair and then she gets up on her treadmill and like time has passed in order to get her there. And it sounds pretty hand wavy to say, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But it is what I'm thinking about at this point in the movie.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why it feels like we move through the first bulk of the film, almost like the first 2.5 acts, really. It feels like the time works really efficiently, and I'm understanding the story. By the time we get to everything after they've dumped the two girls into the river, they go through their drug-induced bit, Silver decides she wants surgery, and then the wedding, like that stuff all happens so fast that I feel like that they really rushed it a little bit in the script to kind of get through all of that. Because, it's like, where did this other woman come from? Especially because Michalina doesn't seem like he seems like he's just kind of playing around with all the women that he meets. Like he just seems not interested in settling. And so it struck me strange that all of a sudden, oh, he met this woman. Now they're getting married. Wow. Now we're at the wedding. Like it just all happened so fast.
Yeah, I agree with that. He also, we never really got a sense for him in studio, right? He's like a session nightclub musician. And so I saw him in the studio and thought, well, this is a change of context. Are they going to show us some new side of my tech that is going to lead us in some interesting places? And it didn't. And I'm sure in the broader scope of this musician's life, there are experiences in a bona fide studio and not just in a nightclub. But changing context for just that, I struggle with, because it begged me to want to see more about his life and didn't end up giving me anything more than just this rushed new relationship to a woman that he marries inside of 3 minutes.
Right. It all just had to happen so we could get to the seafoam bit. I mean, that's really,
yes.
That's where the story felt like they just needed to hurry it along so that we could close out that whole seafoam storyline that they had created.
And to that effect, the seafoam bit is pretty cool.
It was so awesome.
As an old softie like yourself, you have to have fallen for that moment.
Oh, I love.
When she puts her head on the chest. Oh,
where she's contemplating his neck. She's looking at it with her giant fangs out. She's ready to do it. And then she just can't. And she looks at the sun and watches the sunrise with her true love. And beautiful, beautiful effects work here as his body kind of turns from one side to the other. And the camera kind of moves from looking over his right shoulder to his left. And we see that all he's got is just foam covering his whole front. That was just flawlessly executed. It was beautiful. It was haunting and heartbreaking because, obviously for Golden too, who then, goes into fits and attacks and rips his throat out. So
it's awesome. It's awesome. And it boils down to a simple opportunity for Golden to exercise vengeance in this state of wildness that, we know she's capable of because she bit the German to death, and she now gets to exercise it for the person who is most important to her sister, Silver. And then she's gone. She's back into the ocean on her way to America. Who knows? Maybe she kind of grows up into Madison. This is her journey to go meet Tom Hanks. Yeah. I like to imagine she's just a young Madison. God, they should have showed more teeth in Splash. Am I right? If there's anything they were missing. I really like that. I have to say, you made a nod to effects work. I would just like to add the open throat work after it's been ripped out with the slight bubble right in the middle. That made me think of the Jurassic Park cup of water on the dashboard. Like it's a perfect ring of blood coming out of just pooling in his neck. That was a great bit of gore. Yeah. Great. And just the fact that we haven't even brought up the fact that these fishtails, they look so good. They're it's amazing. Insane how 100%. Good. Always. After she eats the German and she's dragging her body across the sand to get back into the water. I mean, it was just so awesome. The way that they executed all of that. Yes. And I mean, it was massive. I don't know. I heard differing things between 50 and 90 pounds of stuff and they had some pedals in there to that they could do to operate. So they were really trying to do all of it. They did a few CG enhancements, but for the most part, it was really there. So it was just flawlessly executed. It was really great. Yeah. Any performances you want to highlight specifically? Well, the two girls playing the mermaids, I thought both of them were great. That was Marta Mazurek and Michalina Olszańska. I hadn't seen either of them before, but I really just thought, they carried the idea of no shame in being naked really well. They just never realized. And I was really impressed with how they did that. But then also King Caprice, who actually she was in Darkness, which we talked about a few years ago, right? In our Agnieszka Holland series. She has a face that is mesmerizing, and watching her sing, eyes, God, yeah. Well, and just all the different hairstyles that she had, she just always captured the attention. She is the sort of person that you would watch on stage. I thought she was just well, and great. They all do their own singing. Let's just get that out of the way. They sound great. They do their own singing on screen. It's not like they're doing it afterward in the studio. Yeah. Right. Yeah, they sound terrific. Yeah. Okay, so this is a horror debut. Right. You talked about it as a horror debut. Yeah. It is Agnieszka Smoczyńska's debut film. Quite
quite a story to do. She had been doing a lot of shorts for quite a while. And then she ended up after this doing like The Field Guide to Evil, Fugue. She has a couple others that she's working on, Silent Twins and Hotspot. And I didn't watch any of her shorts. They had a couple of them that were on the disc, but I just didn't get a chance to look at them.
Have you seen anything else that she's done?
No, I haven't.
Not even just a short, nothing.
I haven't seen The Field Guide to Evil. That was one of those anthology films, and which I always love. I really love them. I don't know why. I just haven't. I think that one just there came this influx of so many horror anthology films, like with the VHS films and the ABC Evil whatever. Like there were so many that I just kind of started losing track of which ones are out there. So I don't think I even had heard of this one.
I haven't heard of anything else that she's done.
Yeah.
And I thought this was, in the words of the Once a Future King, Steve Sarmento, I have to tell you, this was an enormously capable film, competent film. There's a lot going on in this movie. And for us to have as few like critical points as we do in this bonkers universe is a real testament to her as an able director.
Yeah. Especially because I think, I'd have to go back and look, but I think this is the first film in this particular series where the director wasn't also writing the script, or at least co-writing the script. But I mean, it sounds like she was very involved. So with that, it sounds like when she and Robert Bolesto, it sounds like they had worked together on the shorts and stuff. And so they already were familiar with each other and had kind of that working shorthand. But I also love this idea that he actually came up with this idea of kind of doing a story of these two sisters growing up in this club and that whole life. And they were like, well, one of them was like, yeah, sure. And the other's like, I don't know about that. And so he came back to them a few months later and it's just like, what if they were mermaids? And everybody was like, that's the way to do it.
Nailed it.
Yeah. And I just love that. That's, you always hear those sorts of jokes in the writer's room, right? Like, now what if that character was a duck? And, in this particular case, it's like, that is what you needed to really kind of make a film that stands out. And so I think Smoczyńska really found the way to connect to this story. Because she also grew up in kind of this environment where, her mom or her parents did run kind of a place like this. And so she grew up in the same world and speaks to that. And so I think that there's a lot of connection that all of the people involved had to this world.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating. And boy, I'll tell you, I liked it.
Yeah.
I liked my experience with this movie. And it's bonkers, but it was worth it.
Indeed. I'm right there with you. Well, we will be right back, but first, our credits.
The Next Reel is a production of TruStory FM, engineering by Andy Nelson, music by Ryan Pruitt, Oriole Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at the-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. And for this one, he had some help from filmneweurope.com. Find the show at trustory.fm. And if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show. All right, Andy, how to do it awards season?
At the Polish Film Awards, it did pretty well for itself, considering the genre mashup that it was. For the Discovery of the Year, Smoczyńska won Best Director. Kinga Priest was nominated for Best Supporting Actress, but she lost to Anna Dimna in, I don't know how you say this in Polish, I'll just say the English translation, Eccentrics. That is on the sunny side of the street.
Wow. Wait, just try it. Just try it.
Well, hold on. Sound also was nominated, but lost to that same film, Eccentrici sili po słonecznej stronie ulicy. I don't know. That was a mess. I don't know why I let you talk me into trying.
Great.
Eccentric,
do that
but the English translation
later.
Also, Eccentrics. That is on the sunny side of the street.
I don't know what that
doesn't
means.
make. Either way, I struggle. The Polish Film Festival, Smoczyńska was nominated for her debut feature film and won. It also won for Best Makeup and was nominated for Best Film, but lost to the film Body. It did debut at Sundance, where it received the special jury prize for World Cinema Dramatic, and they had this to say for its unique vision and design. This is for a film that really captured our imagination. So, very verbose thoughts on the film. It was nominated for the Grand Jury Prize for World Cinema Dramatic, but lost to the film Sandstorm. At Fantastic Fest, it won a special mention for Fantastic Spirit, and at Fantasia Film Festival, it won the Cheval Noir Special Jury Prize for being a timeless cinematic fairy tale and instant cult classic. And this is peculiar to me. It was nominated for the Best European/North or South American Feature for the Audience Award, but it lost to Hunt for the Wilder People, which I don't think came from Europe or North or South America. Just check it.
Did Europe or North or South America put a lot of money into Wilder People?
Maybe that's why. I don't know how they.
That's crazy.
How they came to that, but yeah, there you go.
All right. Well, it seems like you might have had a little bit more luck with the numbers this time around. How'd you do at the box office?
Yeah, Smoczyńska had 1.38 million euros to work with, which is about $1.76 million dollars and 1.9 million in today's dollars. The movie premiered in Warsaw December 16th, 2014, before playing in Sundance January 2015. It had a lengthy festival run before finally opening in the U.S. February 1st, 2017, opposite A Dog's Purpose, Resident Evil: The Final Chapter, and Gold. It never played on more than 7 screens, though, and it only earned about $102,000 domestically and $7,000 internationally. Very small gross, which is about $117,000 in today's dollars. That was definitely a loss for the film at the box office, leaving it with an adjusted loss per finished minute of $19.4 thousand. That being said, it is a clear voice from a unique filmmaker and has already started building a new audience with its Criterion release.
I'm so glad Criterion picked it up.
It seems like the sort of cult film that they would want to jump on because there's a lot of stuff to talk about, as we've just shown.
Yeah. I think it's interesting as you're writing this. We've got Brian in the chat room has said, I liked it okay. It's bonkers. I would have liked even crazier, even more, I think. Even crazier, even more. More music, more mermaid hotness.
Yeah.
I can see that. I can see that. All right. I, however, thought it was just enough crazy. And it was fine. And we should come back around and rank it at some point, don't you think?
Yes, we should. But first, here's the trailer for next week's movie, Saint Maud.
Saint Maud, have you watched it? We want to know what you thought. Send us your thoughts in a 30-second audio clip. Just use your voice memos app. It's super easy. And then share it with us. You can send an email to reviews@trustory.fm. 30 seconds. That's about right. If you can get your thoughts in a concise 30 seconds, a tight 30, as they say in the biz, we'll put it in the show. We want to hear what you think. Again, reviews@trustory.fm. Here's the trailer.
Dear God, your presence graces the air, and soon everyone will see.
Hi, you Maud?
Yes, hi. It takes nothing special to mop up after the dying.
You're prettier than the last one.
But to save a soul, that's quite something. Bless Amanda's body and bless her mind, which is shrouded in darkness.
When you pray, do you get a response?
Oh, it's like he's physically in me. It's how he guides me.
My little savior.
Hey, I thought that was you. What are you up to?
I'm a private carer.
You're still nursing?
What?
They know what happened.
All the good girls go to hell. 'Cause even God herself.
I just want to see you loosen up.
I've got more important things on my mind.
There's my little saint.
Maud, he isn't real.
Nothing worthwhile comes easily.
All the good girls go to hell. I turn to ignore you. Don't say I didn't want you.
You must be the loneliest girl I've ever seen.
I'm ready and open. And I feel fuller of your love than ever before. I have a responsibility.
Oh, yes, of course.
This is life and death on another level. What if I'm getting it all wrong?
All the good girls go to hell.
All right, Andy, Letterboxd. How does this shake out for you at the Stars office?
At the Stars office. Well, you know me and Stars. I can be very...
I know you talk about them like they're unlimited resource.
They pretty much
they're
are.
just an infinite resource.
I like to give everything 5 stars. That's my new motto is everything is 5 stars moving forward.
All 5s with Andy Nelson.
But I'm coloring my stars now. I have a whole new scheme.
Oh, we're crying out loud.
No, but you know, I have a range of films that I generally really like, and you know, regardless of how many stars they have, and I think for me, this ends up being a 3.5-star film. I think there's some really creative work going on in here. I'm giving it a heart because I genuinely enjoyed the film. It has some story issues. I think it could have been a little cleaner. The music could have been a little more or less droning at times. But I still really am impressed with the world that Smoczyńska and her team created here. So 3.5 with a heart.
I feel like I have introduced in my life more criticism of the actual structure and the transitions in the final act or into the final act that are more troublesome than my ultimate blindness to all things negative about this movie would indicate. I came in with a heavy pro-lure bias. It's probably not as strong a film as I really want it to be, but it's still satisfyingly bonkers. I'm gonna raise you 3.5 to 4 stars, and I will also give it a heart.
Oh my, 4 stars and a heart.
But get that heart in there quick before the girls eat it.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Well, maybe we need extra hearts just so they can sate their appetites, and we can still.
Now there are unlimited hearts in the world, Andy. Now there are unlimited hearts.
That's right. Hey, unrelated, what did you think of the original title, Daughters of Dancing, or Surki Dancingu?
Oh, I prefer the lure. I prefer the lure. The other one sounds like a reality show, a knockoff reality show.
It does.
Like Daughters of Dancing with the Stars.
Wow. Yes, and now I can see
tell
that.
Tell me you didn't get that
somebody's
just
working
now.
on it already. Yeah.
It's already in the workshop. Okay.
Holy cow.
All right.
Well, what did you think about The Lure? We want to know. Just hop into the Show Talk channel in our Discord server where we will be talking about this movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Letterboxd giveth, Andy.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
These are good. These are good. I think this kind of movie is what Letterboxd was made for. I don't think Matt Buchanan knew it at the time, but the lure really helped.
It allows for some juicy comments for sure.
I can't wait to hear yours. I have no idea where you're going. Today locked the most popular review on Letterboxd for this movie, and it comes from Lucy May, who is a delightful video editor in her own right, and as she calls herself an accidental film critic, you can find her at Vimeo, vimeo.com/Lucy May. She gives this movie 4 stars and says, "The two mermaids hissing and singing and chewing on human body parts, me with my camera out. You're doing amazing, sweeties." I love Lucy's reviews. They're all short and sweet, just like that. And she's a great follow on Letterboxd.
Oh, that's so good. So I have this. It is by Lily. Not quite as popular. But Lily gave it 3.5 stars and said this. Gonna tell my kids that this was The Little Mermaid.
I also just scrolled to the one that you were gonna do, but it was too long. From Leticia Fernandez with 4 stars.
Eat
just
the men,
over and
eat
over.
The men,
eat the men, eat the men, eat the men, eat the men. It goes forever.
Yeah.
Why is that not the most popular review of this movie?
So many funny reviews here. Yeah.
Thanks, Letterboxd. Andy, it's hard to believe we've been having weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
Oh, you're telling me. Producing this show week after week is so much fun, but it does require a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
The Originals page at thenextreel.com/originals has links to purchase the source material behind our adapted film discussions. Your purchases there help support the show at no extra cost.
For the entirety of season 11, we featured films directed by women.
The only exceptions were some of our member bonus episodes.
We talked about The Lure for our horror debuts series, which is a very loose adaptation of The Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen.
Definitely miles from the Disney versions.
For our 10-year anniversary series, we covered We Need to Talk About Kevin, taken from the Lionel Shriver novel.
Man, that was brilliant.
And horrifying.
Yeah. The Journalist series included Merrily We Go to Hell and The Weight of Water, adapted from Anita Shreve's bestseller.
We filled some gaps in previous series with member bonus episodes on adaptations like Malcolm X, Mr. Blandings Builds His Dream House, Cactus Flower, Wild at Heart, Life Force, and The Blues Brothers.
Our John Hurd series looked at a trio of adaptations: Chilly Scenes of Winter from the novel by Anne Beatty, Awakenings based on Oliver Sacks' nonfiction book, and Rambling Rose adapted from the Calder Willingham novel.
2 films in our coming-of-age debut series were adapted from books: The Virgin Suicides from Jeffrey Eugenides and The Diary of a Teenage Girl, Phoebe Glockner's graphic novel.
We had Queen of Kotway for our sports series based on Tim Crothers' nonfiction book.
And Clueless kicked off our 90s comedy series, loosely adapted from Jane Austen's Emma.
It totally took place in the 90s, though. Find all of these books and more adaptations on our Originals page at thenextreel.com/originals.
Start your next read from the movies we've covered. Visit thenextreel.com/originals today.